is The Public Interest. I am Malika Ramsey. Thanks for joining us for another edition. This week we focus on the fact that Guyana just celebrated and observed May 1, Labor Day, the day that almost everyone joins in solidarity with our workers. And as always, I have with me leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the opposition, Mr. David Granger. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Malika.
All right. I want to jump right into it, sir. You played a major role in the May 1 activities, and one of the things that struck most of the public is the fact that you called for there to be greater involvement of our young people regarding joining the trade unions and the trade movement and becoming a part of that. Now, not only in my opinion, but we already have a situation whereby young people face unemployment. How are you planning to get them involved in the trade unions if there's no incentive? They don't have jobs. How will they become involved in that?
Well, this is a case of chicken and egg. In fact, both are related. The fact that they are not involved perhaps is a contributory factor to their not getting work.
Okay.
Because the trade unions were established in Guyana a little over 90 years ago in order to protect workers' rights. And we have struggled, people have died, people have marched. I think at the union rally, the TUC rally, you heard people singing a song called the International, which is a song for international workers. You heard them singing Solidarity Forever. For most of the workers there, this was deep nostalgia, because during the 1960s, you heard that song every week, everywhere you went, because there were many strikes as workers tried to, well, they did fight for their rights. They tried to establish, the right to work, the right to good wages, and security of tenure. Now, what I see happening now is that the labor unions seem to be aging. Many of the union leaders are above 50, above 60 years old, and I don't see many young people coming into the organization. But what I'm trying to say, or what I tried to say on the 1st of May, is that they should get involved, because this is the institution that will protect their rights, that will fight for them, for good wages, good employment practices, safety on the job. But I don't see much of that happening. When I was much younger, there used to be something called the Trade Union Youth Movement, TUYM. And I wanted to see a return of such an organization, because a trade union is not just there to protect the rights of working people, but it's also there to train people to get jobs. That is why the Critchlow Labour College was established. And one of the most disgraceful acts of the present People's Progressive Party Civic Administration was to remove the subvention from the Critchlow Labour College. I mean, it is hypocritical to build a statue for Critchlow, Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow, and put it in the compound of the National Assembly, and then take away the subvention from the college, which is established in his name, to train young workers in skills which will enable them to be employed. So that is the contradiction in the People's Progressive Civic Administration. We, in a Partnership for National Unity, are struggling to get work for young people, and the PPP is doing quite the opposite. I made reference also, Malika, to the budget, because the budget is what I call, I said it's a cardboard budget painted to look like concrete. It had a few, I would say, crumbs, but did not give the working people the substantial meal that they need. For example, they gave the senior citizens, the pensioners, a small increase in the pension. They made a slight reduction in the income tax. But essentially, what we were calling for is a lowering of the value-added tax, a lowering of the cost of living, and an alleviation of poverty, positive measures that will remove poverty. And we didn't see any of that. And I believe that in the end, the young people will find themselves in April 2014 in the same or in a worse situation than they are in April 2013.
Okay. I'm going to come back to the budget and as it relates to workers in a bit, but something that also came up in the budget is what you mentioned earlier, the subvention for the Critchlow Labour College. I must ask this, sir. Is APNU, it's David Granger and a Partnership for National Unity, anywhere closer to getting that subvention restored to Critchlow Labour College?
I would say no. The People's Progressive Party Civic Administration is very difficult to negotiate with. And we called for increases in salaries to the public servants, and we got nowhere with that. We called for reduction in the toll to the Berbice Bridge because we know many students and workers have to pay very high tolls to cross the bridge. We got nowhere with that. We called for the old age pension to move to $15,000 a month. We got nowhere with that. So I believe that the young people will suffer, with specific reference to what you mentioned. No, the trade union movement itself, and we have been calling for the restoration of the subvention, and for years this occurred under President Bart Jagdeo, and we have not been able to achieve any movement on the part of the government. It's vindictive, it's petty. And they know that people are suffering as a result of it, and yet they're so callous. They have not moved to restore the subvention.
Not much has been said or has been heard in the 2013 budget for workers, public servants. How do you think that affected workers, especially since May Day came almost immediately after Budget 2013, debates and estimates would have completed?
Well, I mentioned that as a coincidence because the budget this year, just like last year, was presented in March. So, according to the standing orders of the National Assembly, about a month would be set aside for the debate. So it just happened that it came to an end at the end of April, and there we were at the 1st of May. The debate itself was very rich, but it must be understood that that APNU on its own only has 26 seats, and the Alliance for Change has 7 seats. So in order to get any movement at all on the budget, we must combine. And it didn't happen in all circumstances. But the fact that the budget debate ends just at the beginning of the Labour Week celebration is a cause for some pain, because our working people can do more if they're given the incentive, if they're given the resources to do more. And what happens when I go to Parliament every week? I see pictures, I see real people, not pictures actually. People come down from the Essequibo coast to protest against this PPP government, about rice prices and markets. People come down from the East Bank at their own expense to protest against the condition of the roads. You've been there yourself, East Bangor Beach Road, and it's horrible. Some children don't go to school because the roads are so bad. Minibuses don't want to go in some areas because the roads are so bad. And the government has been doing nothing about it year after year. Nurses have to come down from Linden to protest against the non-payment of the gratuities. And we raise these matters in the National Assembly, and as soon as you raise the matter, the minister jumps up and says, oh, this is an administrative matter, we'll settle it. And believe me, these matters, which have taken months of agitation, could be settled within 24 hours. So it is very disappointing to arrive on the 1st of May after the budget debate and not be able to give the working people of this country the type of incentive which would move them to contribute further and further to development. And I think the government has made a very bad move by not sitting down to listen with the opposition, to listen with the workers. Because right here, a Partnership for National Unity met with the trade unions, we met with the Private Sector Commission, we meet with all of the people who want to meet with us, all of the social partners, to discuss how the budget could be used as a tool for development. We're not looking for cake, we're not looking for gifts and toys, we're looking to develop the country in the long term. And this government is playing fast and loose with the people's interest. They're not looking at long-term development. They had what they call a cut and paste budget. They picked up our manifesto and put a little bit to social protection, old age pensions, a little bit to income tax, a little bit to this and a little bit to that. But these measures are so minuscule that they do not bring about the development of the country, which is what we want to see happen in this country.
Before I move off from this aspect of the discussion, do you believe that after hearing some of the cries and the pleas of our workers, especially public servants, on May 1, that there is now a door opened or room for there to be discussion, probably between APNU, AFC, well, I should say among, and the PPP, to somehow come up with some sort of incentive for the working people, especially since the reading of the 2013 budget has just completed?
Well, in our minds, because we are a partnership for national unity, this is what we call ourselves and this is what we are, this is what we believe. We have always advocated the establishment of a tripartite process between the PPP, the Alliance for Change, and a partnership for national unity. And 3 times I have asked Mr. Ramatar to set up this committee, and twice he's not done so. Well, this time, this year, 2013, he's agreed to set up the committee, or at least to set up the mechanism so that 2014 budget would be free from the type of problems we had in 2013. Yes, the answer is yes. I do see that there is need for the 3 parties to sit down together. After all, Malaika, we are the majority. A minority cannot sit down in a little room and decide to plan for the majority. They have to at least consult us. And this did not happen. Even though Mr. Ramatar promised that there would be a consultative process, there were 2 engagements. And that can't be enough. We go around the country, we have outreach programs, we are in touch with the people. So we know, we live in the house, we know where the roof is leaking. So we demand the right to sit down with the government and say, look, this is what the majority of people want to see. And we are committed to the development of this country. But the point is, under the Constitution, we cannot increase expenditure. We can only reduce, because we do not raise revenue. We do not determine how much revenue comes in from the customs or how much royalties come in from gold and diamonds and timber. So under the Constitution, all we can do is reduce. So if you put $10 million for education, we cannot change it to $20 million. That is why we have to talk. Because if we do not speak, if we do not collaborate, if we do not cooperate, if we do not consult, we will not be able to get what is best for the country. And the majority knows what is best. Because we are in touch with the people, and we want to see the best for the people.
Sir, it is believed, or I should say, there are some concerns that one of the reasons, and this is just to come back to my initial question about young people being involved in the trade union movement, it is believed that one of the reasons also that they are not jumping on the bandwagon to become involved is because government has come up with this plan to have more contract workers more than anything else. Your thoughts on that?
Well, the contract worker phenomenon is a major anomaly. I think it was an invention of the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration after the strike of 1999. There was a massive strike for about 8 weeks. And it's the first time maybe for over 40 years that, the civil servants had come out on strike against the government. And I believe it was because of that big strike that the government decided to crush the Guyana Public Service Union. And the way they did it is by removing as many traditional civil servants from the civil service and putting them on special contracts. Some corporations were created. So, for example, the nurses who were traditionally public servants at the Georgetown Public Hospital, now that you create a corporation, they become employees of the corporation. So they no longer work on the civil service conditions. For example, the nurses at Linden, I think, suffer from this as well. They are given special contracts, which means that when those contracts come to an end, they could be dismissed. So it has created a serious problem, perhaps the most serious problem in the civil service. Civil servants traditionally felt secure. Whether or not that's a good thing, I don't want to debate now. But they felt secure that they would have a job, a low-paying job, until they reach the age of 55 and they retire. But now they can go into the boss's office and be told, look, your contract has come to an end, you have no job from the 1st of June. And this, creates a feeling of fear, generates a feeling of fear that they are now working not to fulfill some professional ideal, but they can actually be dismissed or they have their contract terminated at the end of, at the end of the contract. So for young persons, this is the most undesirable situation, It is not as though people had served and they're 60 years old and they're on an annual contract and they know that because of their age they might be retired. This is young persons who are looking to build a career. So I believe that the government invented this device to deprive the public service union of membership, because these contract workers cannot become union members. And of course, some of them are, I would say, living in fear that their contract could be terminated. Who would like to have a mortgage to pay, a wife or a husband and children at home, children going to school, and then in the course of a month you just told your contract is at an end? Where will they find another job? So it's a cruel measure, but they did that to break the will of the public service union because of the strike in 1999.
I may be pushing it here, but would that be the only reason for them doing it? Other than that, what is there to gain from doing something like that?
Well, there are other reasons. I suppose you could look at both sides of the scale. Persons who are in contract actually get gratuities. They're not entitled to a pension. So in the course of the year, they will get a gratuity. So that gratuity we paid, I think it's half yearly, in lieu of a lump sum at the end of their service. It means that if a worker sincerely only wants to work for 10 years, that person will have the opportunity to work and collect his or her gratuity and leave service at the end of that period. Whereas for the traditional public servant, you probably have to wait until you're 55. So if you're 25 and you enter a contract, you want to leave at 35 maybe to go and set up your own business. It is attractive to that type of person, but it's not attractive to career public servants, professionals.
So it's definitely a practice that APN you would want to reverse.
Well, we want to speak to the unions and we want the workers to decide. We're not going to tell the workers what is best for them. We want them to tell us what they want.
Earlier you said that our trade unions are aging. I mean, other than putting...
Trade unionists are aging.
Our trade unionists, other than putting young people into the trade unions, how do we change the face of it? How do we do that? Because I know you continue to promote youth and young people and modernizing things.
Well, we have to look at the structure of enterprise. And we always regarded trade unionism not as necessarily a combative or confrontational organization, but as a sort of club that looked after the workers' interests, that looked after the workers' education. We saw that the trade unions would be able to sit down with other social partners and represent the interests of one of the most important sectors of the economy, that is the working class. We don't see trade unionism as being necessarily conflictual. For example, we have a situation in the bauxite company in which Russians come in. Now, Russians may be unaware of labor practices, they may be unaware of the culture of the Guyanese people. And we had some bad incidents. We had a case where workers complained about roaches in the kitchens, and roaches and other vermin where they had to prepare food, and some of them were dismissed. The other day we saw a case in which they tried to dispose of some explosives, and people, were severely injured. Now, it is true that the business managers, the CEOs, the proprietors may be interested in profits, but the workers are interested in their wages, yes, but they're interested in the conditions of work. Who best to advise the proprietors about those conditions of work? So what we see is a harmonious industry in which not only the workers satisfy certain production goals, but the workers are able to tell the proprietors what factors are preventing them from producing, what factors are making them unhappy. For example, it might be transport, it might be something that's unsafe, it might be something concerned with recreation. And that is the whole point. If a woman has like 3 children, the children go to school during the school time, but the mother is working in August. So instead of giving the mother time off to go to pick up her children, maybe you can have some sort of nursery or some sort of creche or sort of daycare center, so that the mother doesn't have to worry. The mother comes to work, leaves her kids at the daycare center, and works happily for 8 hours a day or however long, then collects her children and goes home. If you don't have something like that, then the mother might have to leave home, leave work early to go and pick up the children and all that sort of thing. So all I'm saying is that the trade union plays an important role in articulating the interests of the working people to the owners of the enterprises. And what we see in APNU is that the economy should work in harmony, not workers fighting against proprietors, not proprietors fighting against government, but all of the elements should be able to sit down at the bargaining table and do what is best for the country, what is best for the workers, what is best for the proprietors, what is best for the government. That's the role we see unions playing. So in terms of aging, I see young workers understanding the importance of unions in helping to protect their working lives, protect their careers, advance their careers even.
In previous years, we would have seen, especially it happens on May Day, of course, unions, in terms of the separation, some unions that are supposedly for government and others that are supposedly opposition, and then there are those that are just somewhat in the middle. Do we still have that problem? And if we do, how do we solve that problem?
Oh, we have that problem because it has been a policy of the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration to divide the labor movement. And although they did not create FITAG, the Federation of Independent Trade Unions of Guyana, it is a tool that they've used to divide the movement. Now, what has happened in the past, and I don't want to be, go into trade union history here, but we had some pretty serious difficulties in the 1960s, the mid-1960s. And I think from that time, the People's Progressive Party Civic, well, that time it was just the PPP, the People's Progressive Party, it had a certain mindset. So when it came back into power in 1992, it was driven by that same mindset. And it set out to work against the Public Service Union, to set out to work against the TUC, set out to work against Critchlow Labour College, set out to work against the Teachers Union. And as a result of that, they were able to bring about a division in the within 7 years of coming into office. The PPP was able to reverse decades of progress towards rebuilding a unified trade union movement. This is because of their fear of the workers. The PPP was always supported by the Guyana Agricultural Workers Union for decades, But even the GAWU, has not been able to stop the rot in the sugar industry. Why? The PPP has packed the board of the Sugar Corporation with some of its own friends and supporters. But when you look at the labor turnout at Gaisuko, sometimes the percentage is as low as 52%. Now, who can run a business with only 5 out of 10 workers coming to work on a given day? If you look at the speech of the Minister of Finance, the budget speech. 6 times in the budget speech he mentions managerial, management, manage. There is a management problem, there is a labor problem. I'm not saying that there are no technical problems, I'm not saying there are no weather problems, but the two biggest problems are management and labor. And that is what we're talking about. We're talking about creating a consensual atmosphere in Guyana in terms of labor relations. Management has to sit down and talk to workers so that they can get greater output. And something is going wrong in the sugar industry, in the public service, in the teaching service, if management cannot sit down and find what is it the workers need. What we need in this country is a social contract in which all of the partners come together and we say, yes, let us do this for the good of Guyana. Not for the good of the proprietors, not for the good of the workers, not for the good of government, but for the good of Guyana. And until we get that social contract, we will not get out of this mess.
I'm going to pose my final question on labor, especially as it relates to youth, because I'd like to eventually get a greeting from you regarding the upcoming arrival day. I want to talk a bit about skills, because it comes back to the Critchlow Labour College not having the subvention. Have there been enough programs or institutions to, in a sense, substitute the training that the Critchlow Labour College would have provided, because they are suffering because of not getting the subvention? So has government done enough to somehow try to replace it if that's what they're trying to do?
Well, it is quite clear that there are problems in the education sector. It is true that the mainstream of the education sector follows a certain path towards academic education. You know, you do your National Grade 6 and then you do your CSEC and you do your CAPE. But the point is, at the end of the road, you do not get a job. So young people have been doing all the right things and getting the wrong results. So there have been for several years something called practical instruction centers, PICs. Now, this might be a great idea in theory, but in practice the PICs are not working the way they should. What I'm saying is this, is that Critchlow is just one institution. You need mass institutions that can create what cater for what I call STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And many of these practical instruction centers need equipment, they need proper lecturers and teachers, they need materials, so that young people who do not have an aptitude for Spanish and for languages and other subjects, they may have an aptitude for design, they may have an aptitude for, construction. But we need to determine early in a young person's life what the aptitude is and create an education system so that they can do what they want to do well and also earn a living from it. I mean, not do what you like, but do what can give them good employment or can employ themselves. And right now, I think people need to take a second look at the way education is conducted in this country. A few weeks ago, we were in the Rupununi and we were told that many people, youngsters are graduating from secondary schools. They have the CSEC certificates, but they have to go to Brazil, and some of them become ranch hands, some of them work in restaurants. So the system is broken and needs to be fixed.
Finally, sir, arrival day is coming up. I always give you the historian cap, so I'd like to give you the final moments of this program to give your greetings to Guyanese who would have arrived.
Well, I must start on I wouldn't say a negative note, because, as you know, there was some dissatisfaction with the so-called concept. Because today, the 3rd of May, is the day on which the Portuguese arrived. The 8th of January is the day on which the Chinese arrived. The 5th of May is the day on which the Indians arrived from the subcontinent. But so I would like to say that, okay, the National Assembly has decided this will be Arrival Day. So I extend the warm, sincere greetings to all of the persons who came. But at the same time, I would like to pay special tribute to the persons not only of Indian descent, but also the people of Chinese and Portuguese and African descent who came. Let us make Arrival Day 2013 a day of arrival for people of all ethnicities, not just one ethnic group. And let us regard Arrival Day, the 5th of May, as a day when Guyanese should band together and celebrate their common heritage. So I would say Happy Arrival Day to all Guyanese.
Thank you very much. Leader of the People's National Congress Reform and Leader of the Opposition, Brigadier the Honorable David Granger. This has been another informative edition of The Public Interest. I am Malaika Ramsey. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.